Olá,
Hello, everyone.
todos. Eu sou
I am Babu
Eu
Carreira.
sou humorista,
I am
comunicadora
a communicator and podcast of Biscoito, podcast that is bisexual. In Brazil, I am a white woman, curly hair, red. I'm wearing a black t-shirt with dragons on, and I will moderate this panel on LGBT in politics here at the LGBTQ2 Rights Forum, an initiative of the government of Canada through its representations in Brazil, Argentina, Chile, in partnership with the São Paulo LGBT Pride Parade. And today we have the support of Karine Zonzina in the sign language interpretation and Prisma in simultaneous translation, Portuguese, English, and Spanish. Here we have Érica Malugin, the congresswoman, councilwoman Bia Caminha from Belém do Pará. We also have Lorena Olivarria, the newly elected mayor of Melipilla in Chile, and then we are going to have the former mayor of Winnipeg, Canada, Glenn Murray, and Daniela Castro, director of the policy area for sexual diversity of the Ministry of Women and Diversity of Buenos Aires. Welcome and thank you for joining us on this panel today.
Bom dia,
Good morning, Brazil,
Canadá,
Chile,
Argentina,
and Argentina,
e Belém do Pará.
And Belém do Pará, that is also a country. I consider it a country, and it's a wonderful country. Bia?
Olá, gente.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, everybody. In gender fair language.
Olá.
Hello. It's a great pleasure to be here with you.
Estou muito feliz de estar com vocês.
I am Lorena.
É um prazer estar com vocês aqui.
O prazer é nosso.
It's our pleasure to have amazing and wonderful people. Let's start our conversation, our experience. And first, I would like to invite Érica, Bia, and Lorena so we can discuss this topic.
In times
of political and social polarization, the defense of democracy and rights has never been more relevant than it is today. The presence of LGBT people in politics has become more and more necessary, and without this presence, our rights are increasingly threatened. How do you think that your participation in the political scene will help shape the society in the coming years?
Érica, pode começar com a gente?
Érica, can you start, please?
Yes. Eu não sabia que era
I did not know that I would be the first. Okay, I go first.
A gente está falando
We are
sobre
talking about
representativity,
and that's important, this topic.
Porque
because
num processo de luta,
of
de
struggle,
de uma
construction of a full citizenship, of
pessoas
course, people,
LGBT,
should have guaranteed their space for institutional policy. Because once that the full citizenship considers our participation, our rights, our duties as well, we should reflect in the spaces of politics, in the space of big corporations, universities, all the space of social work, distancing our bodies from the ghettos that we were introduced mandatorily because of patriarchal normative logic.
A nossa presença é fundamental.
Our presence is fundamental.
Direitos para a comunidade
and then
LGBT,
not only to claim the rights for the LGBT and oppose to our rights, but also to think about society the way it is, broad, plural, and efficiently diverse. I have mentioned many times that diversity is the rule, is the total law for humanity. Our presence on these sites concerns the society as it is, not only
pelas pautas
on the agenda
LGBT.
LGBT. Another aspect that is also important is to
em
understand
cada cenário, em cada
each scenario, each territory is different. If we think about Brazil in general or the world, it's totally different.
Ser uma pessoa LGBT,
you are an LGBT person coming from a project that is colonialist, the one that we had in Brazil, that is a racial stratification, Black people from Africa and the original indigenous people is totally different of being LGBT person in Europe, in the USA, in other territories. It is a conjunction of elements that makes us think about the dimension of race as a fundament, essential outliner, gender and sexuality, because we see most of the times, and it's visible when we know the law, unfortunately, is not for all. Theoretically, it should be, but the law does not reach the peripheral areas. LGBT rights that we have achieved so hardly throughout all these years arrive
eles chegam a ser demarcados,
outlined and approved the rights and the legislation. We do not see this legislation reaching the peripheral areas. We are talking about achieving the workplace. We are also talking about what kind of achievements are there, who gets to the marketplace. LGBT white ones get to this marketplace. White women and Black people, indigenous people, they go behind third, fourth plan in this project. That is a racial hierarchy that is already outlined. So if we think, and I do believe that I am committed with that, LGBT people in politics, they are radically organized and combating and destroying these hierarchies, thinking in the intersectorial way, in all their conditions of their subjectivity. I believe that this becomes a revolution. It's a revolution. And finally, I would say that a Black transvestite in Brazil, in the Chamber of São Paulo, is totally different of being a Black transvestite in Belém do Pará or Bahia, let alone in other territories outside Brazil. How much time do I have? I cannot hear you.
Tem mais tempinho.
You still have time. I'll let you know. And then Bia go after you. You have 2 more minutes.
Tá bom.
Okay.
E aí,
and then,
o que acontece nesse processo?
The thing is, in this process, we need to understand this site and know that I build up a set of negotiations that is totally different in different territories, with different players in the LGBT community. Something that I consider fundamental in this political dispute is not a matter of self-affirmation about being LGBT. Is any LGBT going to politics? Because we have seen people LGBT that frontally attacked all these achievements of rights, this struggle for the LGBT emancipation, beyond the body, beyond the identity. This is connected with the register, this commitment of this person and the history that makes us self-confirming ourselves as in the political dimension. You never forget the exclusion processes that was not viable for our lives, the system that was so poor. We never forget it. When we claim ourselves LGBT and bring it to the public and political dimension, this is essential. It's mandatory, I would say, for this self-affirmation that is connected, raising awareness politically and historically of this position. And then, of course, I'm not removing LGBTQ or anybody's being removed, no, but I'm claiming the political side, in the public space as well, necessarily we need to raise this awareness.
Obrigada, Érica.
Thank you, Érica. Érica mentioned
cada região
every region
tem a sua
has
história
their own story
sua expressão,
and
né? Como é que é para você, Bia,
Bia,
no
for
espaço que
you,
você está,
in your
ocupar o
space
espaço que
that
você
you
está?
occupy,
Você acha que a
what's it like
participação
for you?
sua no cenário
Your
político
participation in
vai
political
ajudar a
scenario will
moldar
help
a
to
sociedade
shape
nos próximos
society in
anos?
the following years?
Bom dia novamente.
Good morning,
Eu
one
falo
more
aqui
time.
da Amazônia,
I am in the
né?
Amazon
Moro dentro da
region. I
floresta
live inside the
amazônica.
forest.
Sou vereadora de uma
I
das
am
principais cidades, se não
the
a principal. A gente gosta de falar que é a
representative.
principal.
I like to
Mas é
say
uma
that is
das
the main
principais
city, one of
cidades
the
da
main cities in the
Amazônia
Amazon. I
e que
am a
tem uma
representative,
característica
and
territorial,
that
né,
is a
de
territorial
enfrentamentos
characteristics
a
of
como a gente vive no
facing how we
espaço, mas
live in
também
this
como as
space, but
violências
how
atravessam o nosso
the
corpo de uma forma muito
violence comes
peculiar.
through
Eu
our
acho que é
people
totalmente diferente
in
da
a very
experiência de viver
peculiar way,
Em São Paulo pra
totally
gente, né?
different from the
É um
experience in São
grande
Paulo.
lugar da
It's a
diversidade.
big
Eu sei que
site
não é,
of diversity,
mas a gente tem todo um
but we
imaginário
have
por
this
aqui de uma
imaginary
lógica
and we have a
de como foi
logic
inclusive colonizada, né? A
the
gente fala que a
colonization.
Amazônia
We
sofreu
say the
duas colonizações. A
Amazon
primeira colonização
was
que veio com
colonized.
os
The first
portugueses,
was
mas a segunda
Portuguese people. The
colonização depois da
second,
Segunda Guerra Mundial,
after the
em que o
Second
Brasil se
World
volta
War,
todo
Brazil
para colonizar a
gets to
Amazônia e ter a
colonize
Amazônia como
Amazon
um
and
grande
having Amazon
espaço
as a big
sem gente,
space
né? Uma grande terra
without
vazia para
people,
ocupar, um espaço
empty
sem gente.
space, no
E
people
aí,
in it.
enfrentar isso é
And to
enfrentar todo
face
tipo de
it, we
política
face
pública
all
que
kinds
sempre
of
em qualquer
public
governo
policies in any
chegou
government
atravessado. Nós somos
was
o
there.
principal
We are the main
estado
state
que produz energia
producing
elétrica, né, que foi
electricity.
grande historicamente atravessado
Historically,
pela construção de
we
hidrelétricas
had the power
com os nossos
plant
povos, nossos
industries in
territórios, e
our
somos
people, in our
o estado que
territory,
paga as contas de energia
the
elétrica
state
mais
that
caras, né? Tem
pay
usinas
the
hidrelétricas que
highest electricity
falta energia no
bills.
Pará
Pará
e
does not
entrega
have
energia para o resto do
electricity
Brasil
because
todo.
this electricity is
Então,
going
falar desse
to
lugar
Brazil. Talking about this
falar de um
place
lugar
is
da
talking
subalternidade do
about the
subalterno, né? A gente fala que a gente tá na periferia
subaltern.
da
We are the
periferia do
peripheral of the
trabalho internacional.
peripheral
E ser um
area.
corpo
And
LGBT,
to
né? Ser um
be
corpo negro,
LGBT
feminino,
body, a
é
female, a black
desafiador,
woman is so
principalmente na
challenging,
política. Eu acredito
especially in
que
politics.
eu, na verdade,
In
vim, né, na
fact,
campanha política
in the
e para esse
political
espaço da política
campaign, open up
com um
this
slogan que era
space
para romper silêncios.
to
E
break
que para a
up
gente
this
sintetiza toda a
silence.
lógica
And that is this
de estar
logic
hoje
of
ocupando a
being
política e da
in the
necessidade
politics
de corpos
today
e
and the
corpos iguais
need
a
of
mim ou parecidos com a
bodies
minha estarem na
similar
política.
to ours to be in
Quando a gente não
politics.
fala,
When we do not talk
a
about
gente não
it,
existe
we do
na
not
sociedade,
exist in
né? E por muito tempo
society.
a gente não
For
existiu,
many
porque a
years,
gente não
we
esteve
never
no espaço da
existed because
política,
we were never
mas não só
present
por
in
não estarmos no
politics,
espaço da
but
política,
not
porque a gente não
only
esteve na
because
decisão
of
sobre a
that.
cidade, a
We
gente não
were
esteve na
not part
decisão
of the
sobre
decision
tudo que
about
nos
the city.
legisla e
Any
tudo que
decision
nos
we were
governa.
part.
Num período
In the
onde o
period where the
conservadorismo, onde o bolsonarismo
conservadorism,
escolhe os nossos
Bolsonarismo
corpos
choose
como os
our
principais
bodies
corpos
as
a
the
serem
main bodies to
combatidos
be
na
fought
política e na
in politics
sociedade.
and
Eu sou
society. I am the first.
na verdade, eu entrei junto com a
I
deputada
was
federal Vivi
together
Reis,
with
mas
the
que não assumiu, né?
representative Ferreira, did
Foi pro
not take
Congresso
up.
logo
She went to
no mesmo dia que ela
Congress
tomou
on
posse
the
aqui.
same day that
Mas
she
sou a
was
única vereadora
inaugurated.
LGBT
I am
na
the
cidade,
only
numa Câmara de
councilwoman
35 pessoas,
in a
e a mais
body
jovem.
of 35, the youngest one.
Isso pra
And
gente
this
tem
to us
muito
is so
significado em
meaningful
como
on
esse meu
how
corpo vai
my
enfrentando
body
os
will
espaços
face
e
and
como quando
occupy these spaces.
fazer política, né,
And
sentar na
making
mesa para discutir,
politics, you
como
sit at
quando
a table to
eu
discuss.
tenho refletido muito sobre
I
isso esses
always
dias.
reflect
Eu
about
sento
it.
numa
I
mesa,
sit
num
at a
jantar,
table, a
com
dinner,
30
30
homens brancos
white
ao meu redor,
men
de
around
terno,
me wearing
ricos, que
suits,
vêm de uma lógica
rich, coming
política
for a political logic
colonial,
that is
principalmente aqui no
colonial,
Pará, uma política
especially here in
colonial, que são as
Pará.
mesmas famílias que
The
estão no
same
poder,
families in the
desde que
power
Belém é Belém,
since
desde que Pará é
Belém
Pará,
was founded,
atravessando toda aquela lógica
crossing all
e
that
rompendo
logic
esses
and breaking
silêncios
up that
históricos que foram
silence,
colocados
historical
por nossos
silence
corpos.
that was placed to
Então, só
our
o fato de eu
bodies.
estar ali,
So I am
né, é muito
there,
importante, mas esse
and
fato
this
de
is
me
important.
colocar como
But
uma pessoa
placing
bissexual,
myself as a
né, me
bisexual
colocar
person,
como uma
placing
pessoa
myself
negra
as a black
de um
person
partido de esquerda,
from
diga-se
a
de passagem, do
left
PT, que é o partido que
wing
mais
party,
foi
PT, that is a party that
combatido
was so fought
e foi criado
and
um sistema de
created
ódio
a
contra
hatred system
nós.
against
Então, é uma
ourselves.
violência que
So
vem
this
também
violence is also
por
present
simbolizar esse partido de
because
esquerda,
of my
assim
political
como os outros
party
partidos de
as
esquerda.
the other
E
left-wing
aí a gente está
parties.
ali naquele
And we are
espaço
there in that
reivindicando
space,
esse lugar,
claiming our
né?
site,
Porque
our
esse lugar
place,
também não é só
because this
retórica,
place
é
is
um
not a
lugar da gente
rhetorical
reconhecer
place
e
only.
construir
We need to
políticas
acknowledge
públicas
and build
que
up
sejam pensadas da gente para a
public
gente e
policies
que ecoem
that are
entre
to
nós.
us
Ontem a
and
gente fez uma
equal
plenária
among us.
LGBT,
We had a plenary
uma lei que a
session
gente protocolou
and a
essa
law that
semana,
a
foi uma
protocol,
lei
this
do aluguel
law
social
of social
para
rent
jovens
for
em
young
vulnerabilidade
people in
social
social
que
vulnerability
foram
situation that
casa,
were expelled from their
por serem
houses
LGBTs,
because they were
pessoas
LGBT
em vulnerabilidade.
and they
E
are
aí,
in
isso foi
vulnerable
trazido no caso de violência
condition
doméstica para as
and
mulheres.
domestic
E quem
violence for
seria
women.
capaz
And
de
who
pensar
would
uma
think
lei, a
about
não
a
ser
law
pessoas que estão
only people that are in this cycle of situation experience this. My girlfriend was expelled because she taken up before the elections day. And who can be present in society to understand that? It's not a command, it's not a week of the LGBT pride and pink money, and we celebrate our lives, but without commitment with what we experience, we need to understand the place of privilege, but social advantage, so we need to bring people in with us. And I believe that our presence is in this sense, to show the other young people, in my case, to other people, that we can be, we are a subject. At some point, we were acknowledged as people, although the violence we have suffered, and it's important to say that. And also think about public policies. We are left-wing parties. We defend the state that is present in our life, and present as well when we suffer violence, because the state has a duty to us. And so meaningful to be in politics. This helps us a lot to bring this revolution in the social logic, increase of number of people. We do not want to be the only ones. I do not like to be the first one, let alone the last. I would like to open up a space and bring spaces for new societies.
Obrigada, Bia.
Thank you, Bia.
O complemento da Lorena.
Lorena, would you like to complement on that, your comment about it, please? Yes.
Bem,
Érica, Bia,
Bia,
I share your opinion. That is not so different from what we experience in Chile. In our country, we have 146 municipalities, 346, and just 17, they are part of this municipal network for diversity.
Além disso,
And then 155 in this process of having a new political constitution, and different council centers and boards, and just one for diversity. And I am the first one in Chile. And I believe that our political participation and the poor situation that we have in our country, and in this sense, our dissident feminism somehow will bring this participation, and this helps us to bring memory, and then there is violence. We are in a society where violence is growing in our neighborhood area, but also the state violence, this violence that is generated in injustice. It's not personal that one day we have the diversity so I believe that our political position will mark before and after, because this day is the day that we have the most political representation in our community. The political scenario is also an individual learning process. We are participating in politics for many years. So this learning process is continuous and collective, so I can also look together with the society, how we are going to leverage this network and what we are contributing, because we are not just claiming our rights, but also we would like to leverage a new economy, a social economy. We would like to generate constructive dialogue to strengthen up this new generation
para que a nova
so
geração
they
também
can
possa
take
estar
the
nesse espaço, porque
decision.
são pessoas
Because these people have rights
Isso.
to. We have this overview on what we want to leverage,
para as
higher
novas gerações, para que digam, não
participation
tenhamos medo, eu quero
in
participar
active
ativamente na
participation
política,
in
porque isso também
politics, and then we
vamos
can
construir
build
uma
a
sociedade
society
dessa
like
forma.
this.
Obrigada, Lorena.
Thank you, Lorena. I would like to ask you to speak louder and get your microphone closer to your mouth because we have difficulties in listening to you. Excellent. Thank you so much for you all. And now we're talking about occupying these spaces. I would like to bring one more topic. In many countries, the presence of LGBT candidates is still frowned upon and faces many barriers before even reaching Congress or the House of Representatives. How to open spaces is still so dominated by the most conservative thinking. I would like to start asking Bia, very young person coming up to this conservative space, facing problems, and then Erica. And I would like to welcome Glenn Murray, our Canadian participant, and we'll also answer this question. Bia, for you, how you opened up this space so dominated by conservative thinking?
É muito difícil,
It's so
né?
hard, it's very hard.
Seria incoerente falar que não é difícil.
I would never say that it's not hard. The attack that we receive is personified in our bodies, in our lives. This attack, none other subject suffers, but something that we insisted a lot
em falar com os
is
nossos,
to talk
né,
about
e com as pessoas que estão mais
people that
próximas
are
daqui,
closer to
né,
us,
não se concentrar
not
em convencer o
concentrating in
inimigo, de que a
convincing
gente
the
é gente, de que a
enemy
gente é sujeito,
that we are
mas de falar
subjects,
com as
that we
pessoas
are
que estão
people, but
aqui
talk to
e
people that are
sensibilizar
here
essas pessoas,
and
sensibilizar
raising
essas
the
famílias,
awareness
né,
of
famílias
these families, LGBT
famílias,
families.
que têm filhos, que
They
têm
have
irmãos,
children,
que têm
they
sobrinhos,
have brothers and nieces and
criar uma rede
nephews,
de apoio,
and
de
creating
força,
a
de segurança,
support
para que a
network
gente
for
consiga estar
strength
nesses
and
espaços
safety,
e que a
so we
gente
can be
consiga, a
present in these
partir de um
spaces
espaço
and
de
we
voz maior,
can have higher voice convincing other people
com isso.
with our
Fortalecer uma
voice,
base
straighten
social,
up a
acho que
social
é essa
base.
palavra, né?
That's
Fortalecer
the
uma
word,
base social
straightening up
que entenda esses
social
nossos corpos
foundation
como
to understand our
sujeitos,
bodies as
entenda
subject
a
bodies
necessidade e importância
and
de
the
a gente estar na
importance
política.
of us in
Isso
politics.
faz parte,
And
acho,
this is
desde
part,
do partido político
since
que a
the
gente
political
ocupa,
party that we
que é sempre
represent,
desafiador, acho que não
it's
tem
always
espaço,
challenging. There is no
que é um
space
espaço ileso,
that
assim, um
is
espaço que a gente vai
harmless,
trafegar com
that we are going
tranquilidade,
to be
nem a
nice and
família,
easy,
nem o
not
partido
even family,
político,
not even political party,
nem as
not
universidades,
even
enfim. Mas é sempre um
universities,
espaço de
but there
resistência,
is
de luta,
always
de
a
convencimento,
resistance space for
e escolher as
convincing, for
maneiras que a gente
struggle,
vai
and
fazer
choose
isso,
the
né?
best
Como
ways
a
of
gente vai
doing
abrir
it,
esses
how we are going to
espaços,
open up this space,
mas principalmente a partir dessa
especially
construção
from
dessa
this
base social,
construction
dessa
of this social
sensibilização,
foundation,
dessa
raising the
resistência,
awareness, the
desse
resistance,
processo que também
this
é
process that
educativo,
is
né?
educational
No
as
sentido de
well,
Paulo
in
Freire,
the sense of
né?
Paulo
Da gente
Freire,
construir essa maioria
build up
social,
the
já que a
social
gente vem desse
majority.
país,
We live
de
in this
histórico tão
country and we have a
violento, né?
violent
Contra um grupo de
history
pessoas
against a group of
e de
people
histórico de
and a
tanta exclusão.
history of so much
Então, acho
exclusion.
que é um pouco
I believe
disso.
that's it.
Érica, você pode fazer
Erica, would you like to comment on that? In your point of view, occupying this space?
Tenho dito desde que eu tomei
There is a
posse,
saying, since I was
também fui eleita,
inaugurated,
assim como
I
a
was
Bia,
elected as Bia
no ano em que
in the
Bolsonaro,
year
não, você foi
that
eleita, não foi em 2018,
2018, right?
Bia?
When were you elected? Last year.
Tá,
Bia was
ano
elected
passado,
last year.
Em 2018,
2018,
quando eu sou
I was
eleita,
elected.
eu fui eleita, Bolsonaro também foi eleito,
Bolsonaro
né?
was elected as well, our president.
Para mim, o que já estava dado,
That I
não era
had
o
back
cenário
then
só
was not the
bolsonarista.
scenario
Eu
of
sabia que eu ia
Bolsonarism. I
adentrar
knew that I would start up in a place
que é
that is
inóspito.
not
Mas não é só a
welcoming,
política
not
que é
only
assim. Como a
politics
Bia
like this,
falou,
as Bia
a gente tem
said,
disputas
we have
dentro dos
disputes in the
partidos, a gente
parties,
tem uma
we
disputa
have
que é
a
dentro de qualquer
dispute
espaço de
in
poder e de
any
sociabilidade.
space
Então,
of
se a gente
power and
pensar
sociability. If we
o que
think about
significa negociar o pertencimento dos nossos corpos na
negotiating
universidade,
the
o que
belonging
é
of
negociar o
bodies in
pertencimento dos nossos corpos dentro de
university,
uma
our
situação
bodies in a
de trabalho numa
situation of
empresa,
work at a company,
etc. e tal. Então,
etc.
institucionalmente não é
Institutionally, it's
diferente,
not
né?
different.
Estruturalmente,
Structurally and
não é diferente,
institutionally, it's
porque
not
as violências
different.
elas
The
acontecem, as
violences
objeções e
happen.
as dúvidas
And the
sobre
doubts and the
a nossa
comments
existência,
about our
né, sobre nossos
existence,
corpos,
about our
ele
bodies,
está presente
is
em qualquer
present
lugar, porque essa
anywhere,
violência
because this
é de ordem
violence is
sistêmica, né, de ordem
systemic
que caminha, inclusive,
and
junto da
is
institucionalidade.
together with the
Então, isso é muito
institutionality. So
importante, e a
that's
política ela não
important.
está
And
separada, a
politics is
Assembleia
not
Legislativa de São Paulo
separate.
não
The
está
House of
dissociada
Representatives
disso,
São
e
Paulo
a
is not
sociedade
separate
perpetua em
that
termos de objeção e
society
projetos de
on
exclusão.
projects of exclusion.
Uma coisa
Something
que eu
that
acho
I
muito
believe that
salutar
is so healthy
é trabalhar
is to work
dentro de uma perspectiva
under a
propositiva.
perspective that has
Para além da
proposal, in
oposição, que
addition
nós somos
to
obrigadas a fazer
opposition that we
constantemente,
always
nós temos
have
que
to
estar
do. We
prontas
have to
para
be
se opor
ready
a
to be
projetos e
opposed
a
to
intervenções
projects and interventions that are constant
enfim, dos nossos corpos,
of
ideias,
our bodies,
etc.
ideas,
E projetos que
etc.
são
And projects that
LGBTfóbicos, a
are
gente precisa propor algo,
LGBT-phobic, and we need
colocar
to
algo no
propose
lugar.
something, to
E aí
replace
encaminhar
something,
projeto que
and
eu
send a
chamo no meu
project that I
gabinete, né, de
call
projeto político e
political
pedagógico.
project and
A gente chama projeto
pedagogical
político
problem.
e
We have a
pedagógico. A gente
pedagogical and political
define
project,
assim, que é
defining this
exatamente
way.
colocar
Exactly,
uma
to
narrativa,
place a
colocar a
narrative,
narrativa
to place
como
the
centro das
narrative as the
discussões.
center of
Existe a
discussion.
narrativa
That is the
conservadora
narrative that is
conservative,
conservative,
que tira direitos, que
removing
absolutamente violenta,
rights,
etc. Ela
violent
existe.
exists.
A gente
This
precisa
exists.
colocar
We
uma
need
outra
to place a
narrativa no lugar.
different one,
Não necessariamente
not
para disputar
necessarily to
frontalmente
dispute
com ela,
frontally,
mas para
but in
apresentar à
order to
sociedade
present
que
to
existem outros
society
caminhos e
other
que isso não diz
ways.
respeito
And it's not
especificamente às
exactly
pessoas
about
LGBTs,
LGBT
porque
people,
uma dimensão
because a
também
dimension
que reduz
that
o trabalho de uma pessoa
reduces the
LGBT na
work of
política
LGBT
é
people
achar
in
que ela está
politics to think
legislando em
that they
causa
are
própria, digamos assim,
advocating their
né? Ou
own
intercedendo
cause,
apenas por pessoas
interceding just
LGBTs,
for LGBT
quando nós
people.
estamos falando
But we are
sobre
talking
pluralidade,
about
sobre
plurality,
a diversidade que a
diversity that the
sociedade tem
society
efetivamente.
has.
Então, a gente só está
So we are
colaborando
just
para dizer o
collaborating
óbvio.
to say the
É
obvious,
importante
and
isso
it's
porque,
important
por
because,
exemplo,
for example,
a Bia falou de um
Bia
programa de
talked
habitação, de
about a
moradia social, achei
housing, social
incrível, do
housing
aluguel de
program
moradia social.
of a renting
Por exemplo,
program.
na
For
Assembleia
example,
Legislativa
in the
teve
House of
projeto do
Representatives, there
governador
was a
para
project of the
fechar uma autarquia
governor
importantíssima
to
que construía
close
casas populares,
a
que
deal
era a
for
CDHU,
popular
casas,
houses
enfim, para pessoas com
for
baixa renda e
people with
etc e
a
tal.
small
E assim,
income.
eu sou uma pessoa
I am a
LGBT,
person
e se
LGBT,
acreditam que eu
and
estou
if they believe that
centrada
I'm
e
centered
exclusivamente pensando
exclusively
sobre
thinking about
LGBTs no sentido
LGBT
limitado
in a
disso,
limited
estricto
point of view, a
disso,
restricted point of
jamais
view,
pensaria que
I would
eu
never
estaria
think
frontalmente me
about
opondo ao fechamento
opposing
dessa autarquia,
to
porque eu
this
estou pensando,
housing
além da
project. I'm
dimensão
thinking
de
about
gênero, de sexualidade,
beyond
de
gender,
classe também.
beyond class.
Então, assim, e as pessoas
And people,
LGBTs,
LGBT
pessoas
people,
pretas,
black
mulheres que
people,
não têm
women
condições de
that
comprar uma
cannot
casa.
buy their
Então,
own
assim, essa
houses,
autarquia não pode
they
fechar.
cannot
Então,
be
acho
without
que
this
colocar
housing
isso no
program. So
lugar,
place
dizer
it
que
and
a
say,
gente, no sentido
in the
pedagógico, colocando
pedagogical
essa narrativa
sense,
no
in this
centro e
narrative as a
compartilhar,
center, and
dizer assim,
share
a
it,
única
say,
democracia
the
que
only
nós vivemos é a
democracy that we
democracia
live
da
is the
tragédia,
democracy of
a democracia da
tragedy,
violência.
of
Então,
violence.
assim, nossas
So
dores se
our pains
aproximam, as
are getting closer,
vulnerabilidades
the
se aproximam.
vulnerabilities are getting
Então,
closer.
somar nisso, você não
I
precisa
would
ser
like to add, you
LGBT
don't
para
have to be
interceder
LGBT to
e para se
intercede on
opor
it and to
à
be
violência que
opposed
incide
to
sobre
the
os corpos LGBTs,
violence
porque a gente
that
está
we have
falando
against
de
LGBT bodies.
eliminar
We are
essas práticas de
eliminating
violência,
these
enfim.
practices of
Então,
violence.
eu acho que uma
I think
solução
that a
importante
solution,
é um
important
processo,
solution
sim,
is a
de,
process,
assim como há a
as we
narrativa
have this narrative that
conservadora,
is
brancocêntrica,
conservative,
patriarcal,
patriarchal,
cisnormativa, que
cis.
essa outra
There is
narrativa
another
adentre o
narrative
centro das
in the
discussões e
center of
ela
discussion
dispute esse
to
espaço
dispute
no
this
imaginário
space in
da
the
sociedade.
imaginary of
Né? Então,
society.
cabe a nós,
So it's up
obviamente,
to us,
enquanto
of course,
parlamentares, pessoas,
as
agentes da
people,
política, mas não só,
representatives,
movimentos sociais
social
e
movements
pessoas que
as
se
well,
dizem
and
aliadas,
people that are
que intercedam
ally to
nesse
intervene in
processo
this process
de
of
organização dessas
organizing
ideias,
these
né?
ideas,
Difusão dessas ideias,
merging these
dessa prática
ideas,
política
political
que
practice
se propõe ser
that is
revolucionária, no
revolutionary
sentido que
in the
propõe
sense
a
that there is a
emancipação de
proportion of
todos, e
emancipation
não
of
apenas
everybody, not
de nós,
only
né? É sobre
ourselves,
nós, mas
about
para a
us,
emancipação
but for the
coletiva.
collective
Então, uma
emancipation.
vez que isso possa
Once
ser
that this can
compartilhado,
be
difundido,
shared,
apresentado, né? Qual é o
presented,
projeto
what is the project, political
da
project
população
of the LGBT
LGBT
population?
ao ser eleita
in
ou
order
antes
to
disso,
be
né, com
elected,
os
or
movimentos
before
sociais,
that, in the
as pessoas
social
não LGBTs têm
movement,
acesso a isso?
non-LGBT
Até
people can
muitas
access,
LGBTs
most
não têm.
LGBT
Então, a
don't
gente
even
precisa
have access. We
compartilhar
need to
isso e
share this,
apresentar um projeto
representing a
efetivamente
project
complexo
that is
e
complex
completo
and
do ponto de
complete,
vista da
considering the
sociedade, né? Do todo,
society
do
as a
qual nós
whole,
fazemos
and we are
parte
part of it.
temos que fazer
We
de
must
forma
be part
integral
of
e
it
restrita.
totally.
Obrigada, Érica.
Thank you,
Queria pedir
Erica.
agora a
I'd
fala
like
da
to
Lorena.
ask
Lorena está
Lorena for
conosco?
her consideration. Lorena, can you hear us?
Me escucho mejor,
Can you hear
parece,
me
¿no?
better now?
Agora estão ouvindo
Yes,
melhor. Sim,
much
sim,
better.
sim. Agora sim, estamos ouvindo muito
That's
melhor.
great.
Muito bom.
Yes.
Bem,
When I hear this, I'm so
eu tenho muita
connected
admiração
to the
pela clareza
clarity
com que as
that
minhas
my
companheiras
colleagues
se
express.
exprimem.
I
Eu
feel
sinto
that
que, além das
we have
fronteiras que
frontiers,
nós
but
temos
we are
geográficas, somos
the
um só
single
território.
territory.
E
Melipilla,
Melivia
that is a rural
é uma
community,
comuna
a
rural onde eu
rural
moro, na
community in the
periferia da
region.
região
The
onde está
capital
a capital
city
do
is the
Chile, a
metropolitan
região
area.
metropolitana.
Melipilla
Melipilla
is
está
in
dentro
the
das
final
últimas comunas,
communities,
no limite com outras
frontiering with
regiões.
other regions. It's
É
a
uma zona
rural
muito
area.
rural,
Historically, is
historicamente
also
também
a
uma
very
comuna muito
conservative
conservadora.
community.
E o
And
fato de que
then
possamos
we
estar
have
habitando
these
esses
spaces.
espaços,
The
a
first
primeira mulher
woman that is a
prefeita da
mayor in
comuna,
this
e
community
além
and a
disso,
feminist
feminista
and a lesbian.
lésbica,
And I believe
eu
this
acho que isso também
generates as
cria
well a new
um novo
process, a new
processo social.
social process. We are
Somos
part
parte
of
do
the
processo
social
social.
process. We
Sempre
have always been in
estivemos no
this
território.
territory.
Estamos
We
na
are part of the
economia,
economy,
estamos
the
na arquitetura,
architecture, the
estamos na
culture,
cultura,
the
estamos nas
arts.
artes,
We are
estamos em todos os
everywhere.
lados. O tema é
So
por
why
que
it's
é
so
tão
hard
difícil hoje em dia
nowadays to be
habitar
in the
esses espaços
institutional
institucionais,
spaces?
porque
It
nos
is
custa
so hard
tanto,
not
não
only
somente junto
the
ao eleitorado
citizenship,
da
but
cidadania, mas
also
também
the
os
parties, the
próprios
political
partidos.
parties
Hoje em dia, por
nowadays.
exemplo,
I am
eu
part
sou
of
parte
the
da
social
Convergência Social,
convergence,
que é
that
um
is a
partido
political
de frente
party.
ampla,
And
e o
our
nosso
party,
partido
we
temos
have
uma
a
frente de
diversity
diversidades e de
and
ciências
sexual
sexuais e de gênero.
dissidence. And in
E
this
nesse
space, we
espaço
have
conseguimos também
achieved in
impulsionar
contents and
conteúdos e iniciativas,
initiatives to
complementar
complement
o
the
trabalho
work,
legislativo, porque além
because we do
disso não
not
temos
have
representação no
representation in the
parlamento.
parliament.
Então,
So we
também
consider
nos
that we
damos
need
conta que precisamos de uma
sexual
educação
education
sexual
that is
integral,
complete
que
to
possa criar
generate
maior
higher
naturalidade da
naturality
nossa
of our
corporalidade,
bodies,
da
our
nossa
gender
identidade de gênero,
identities, to
nos reconhecer
recognize
como
ourselves
pessoas
as
que
people
temos vínculos
that are connected,
sexoafetivos.
affectionated.
Então,
So this is a
é um processo
process
que já
that is
estamos
been here
transitando
for
há muitos
years,
anos,
and it's more
porque
like, and it's easier
talvez seja muito mais
to
fácil
generate
criar
higher
maior incidência
political
política,
awareness, but it's not
mas não é
enough. That's not
suficiente, não é
enough.
suficiente.
Also
Também penso
thinking
que
that opening up
abrir espaço no
spaces
interior dos
inside of the
partidos
parties in order
para
to
garantir
ensure
que também possamos
that
ter,
we can be part of this
disputar esses
popular
cargos também em
election
eleições populares.
process. And
E
this
dessa
way,
forma,
not
não
only
somente
generating
fazendo alianças ou
the
impulsos de candidaturas
independent
independentes, que também podem
application,
ser
that
uma
is also
opção.
a
Eu
choice,
acho que à medida em
as
que
the
os
new
novos partidos
political parties
políticos vão
generate
criando
higher
uma visibilidade,
visibility,
vão criando uma
higher
incidência
political
política para a
representation
nossa
to our
comunidade, vai ser
community,
muito mais
it's
fácil também
easier
que para
outside,
fora se
we
possa
can make
visibilizar,
this
se podemos ser
visibility higher.
reconhecidos com toda a nossa diversidade. Eu sinto que essas
And
barreiras que
these
hoje em dia
frontiers that
continuamos
we
vendo,
see,
talvez
maybe in a
num
smaller
baixo
percentage,
percentual, menos do que era em
lower
outros
than the
anos, mas
previous years, this
vai
is still
continuar
like this.
permanecendo,
Unfortunately,
lamentavelmente, até que podemos
until we
garantir
do
uma
not
educação
have
sexual integral, até que os
sexual
nossos direitos não
education
sejam
in order
garantidos
to
também
ensure human
de
rights,
forma completa,
assuring it
em
all.
garantia completa,
The justice
desde a justiça, a
system.
partir da
I
justiça. Eu me
remember
lembro,
Nicole
Nicole
Saavedra, that
Saavedra
is a
é uma
woman, a
mulher
lesbian
lésbica
woman, in the
da
region of
região de Valparaíso,
Valparaiso.
que
They took
teve
her so
muito
much
tempo para que o
time for
processo
the
de
investigation
pesquisa, de
process. See,
investigação
they're
aparecesse
responsible. Why does
responsável.
it
Por que isso
happen?
acontece? Porque
We
temos
also
também
have
uma
a
justiça
patriarchal
patriarcal,
justice,
uma
sexist
justiça
justice,
machista que invisibiliza
that
os casos
the
de mulheres
lesbian
lésbicas
women
ou de
cases
mulheres
become
ou
invisible.
pessoas da
People in
nossa
our
comunidade
LGBT
LGBTQ+,
community are
isso
invisible. And this is
é
so
algo muito grave.
severe.
Eu
And I
penso
think
que
that we have in this
ocupando esses
space,
espaços vai ser
it's
muito mais
easier
fácil
to
avançar
advance in
nesses
our
direitos.
rights. And I
E eu
believe
acho que o
the
papel que temos
role
como
that we have as
pessoas, como
people, as
indivíduos,
individual,
como
natural
pessoas
people,
naturais, como
individual
individuais,
people, this
também
is
vai
also
ser importante,
important
porque a
because
nossa
our
família
families,
também temos
we have
lésbicas, também
lesbians,
temos
we have
homossexuais, também temos
homosexuals, we have
famílias
trans
trans, também
families,
temos
we have
companheiras de trabalho
workmates,
que
that have
que
experienced
viveram, inclusive, de
harder
uma forma muito
times
mais
than
difícil. O
being
fato
a
de você seja uma
woman,
mulher
a
lésbica,
lesbian, a
branca,
white woman.
não
That's
é a
not
mesma
the same
realidade que pode
reality that
ter
a
uma
woman,
mulher
trans woman,
trans,
afrodescendant
afrodescendente,
has,
que
that
também
is
está
also in my
na minha comuna, né?
community.
Também tem
There are
diferentes
different
violências que são
violences
de
that
forma
cross
interseccional.
everybody.
Eu acho que o
And
fato
we
de
are
que estamos
having
dando
these
esses
small
pequenos
steps.
passos,
Tomorrow we are
amanhã vai
having a
contribuir
higher
de uma forma
contribution to
significativa
advance in our
para
rights.
conseguirmos nossos direitos.
Muito obrigada, Lorena.
Thank you, Lorena.
Queria dizer que a
I'd
gente
like to
acabou de
tell you
receber,
that
está
we
conosco o
have
ex-prefeito
just
de Winnipeg,
received
no
the
Canadá,
Mayor of
Glenn
Winnipeg,
Murray.
Canada,
Seja
Glenn
bem-vindo,
Murray.
Glenn,
Welcome,
à
sir, to
nossa
our
conversa,
conversation, to our
Temos aqui,
chat.
chegou o representante
We have
do
the
Canadá.
representative of
Vamos
Canada
falar
here.
sobre
Let's
isso.
talk about
E,
it.
assim como outros países,
As other
o Canadá,
countries,
o Canadá, a
Canada,
gente pode ver que é uma
we
sociedade
see
muito mais
that is
aberta
a much more
para a
open
diversidade,
society to
e as leis
diversity,
são
and the
mais
laws
abrangentes.
are more
Então,
comprehensive.
desde
Since
2005,
for
Canadá
example,
permite
Canada
qualquer
has
pessoa
allowed
same-sex,
same-sex marriage,
sendo o quarto
being the
país do
fourth
mundo
country
a
in the
fazê-lo
world
até
to
o
do so
momento.
at the time.
Mas antes disso,
But before
o
that,
Canadá também
Canada
passou
also
por um
went through
período de
periods of discrimination,
discriminação,
with gays and lesbians being arrested in bars and nightclubs in the mid-1960s and 70s. Glenn, how did this change happen in public policy and in society? How do you think that we can learn from Canada?
Wow, that's a big question.
Olha, que pergunta
I
enorme.
want to first
E eu gostaria
thank
de,
all of you for
primeiro,
sharing
pensar
your stories.
e
I've been
agradecer,
really
né,
moved
vocês
by
por
what I've heard.
compartilharem. Eu fiquei muito
We're
emocionada
all
com o
on
que eu ouvi
different
até
journeys,
aqui.
and I
Jornadas
think
diferentes temos
things
aqui.
change
Eu
quite
acho que
dramatically
as
over
coisas
time.
mudam
And I'm guessing I'm one of the
dramaticamente com o
older people on
tempo.
this
Eu
at this
imagino que
conference
as
and in this
pessoas
call.
mais velhas aqui que
I started
assistem essa
my
conferência,
activism
eu
for
comecei o meu
gay and lesbian
ativismo
rights in Montreal, where
para
I grew up,
direitos de
which
gays e
in the
lésbicas
70s
em Montreal. Eu estava crescendo, foi nos
included
anos
sexual
70,
orientation in
e também
1976
orientação
in a provincial
sexual,
human rights charter
76,
for the
aqui,
first time.
quando era encarregado de direitos humanos
To
pela primeira
understand
vez.
Canada, we're a little
E
different than a
compreender que
lot
o
of the
Canadá é
federated
pouco
states in South
diferente
America
dos
in that our
estados federados da
provinces,
América
our subnational
do
governments are
Sul.
very
As
powerful. They
províncias
hold most of the
e os
power,
governos
healthcare,
subnacionais
education,
são
human rights,
muito
cities.
poderosos para direitos
Much of
humanos,
the vast
educação,
majority
serviços de
of what
moradias.
the
A
political policies that
maioria
affect
das
queer,
políticas
gay, lesbian,
públicas que
transgender,
afetavam
non-binary people
as
are often
pessoas não
fought out at
binárias,
the
trans,
provincial level.
lésbicas,
Basic human rights,
era a nível
access to services, the
provincial.
right to parent,
Acesso a
the right to get
serviço,
married, all of those
direito
things
a
exist
casar-se.
province by province.
Essas coisas
And
existem
Quebec
de
was 10
província
years
para
ahead of the
província.
rest
E
of the country
Quebec
in
estava
starting
10
to
anos na
change
frente no
legislation.
resto do país,
And I was
começando
literally
a
a
mudar a
teenager. I was 14
legislação.
years old,
Eu era
and I
jovem
formed a
adolescente
gay lesbian youth
foco.
group.
Eu formei, então,
And
grupo
this was a
de
time
gays e
when the words were not
lésbicas.
very well
Era
used.
momento onde o mundo não estava nem
Eventually,
falando
I
sobre
won't do a whole
isso.
lot of
E,
work. I ended up in
eventualmente,
Winnipeg, which is a fairly socially
trabalho que eu fiz
conservative
bastante em
Midwestern
Winnipeg.
city. It's an
Trabalho
urban
numa
area, but in a
cidade,
largely
uma área
rural part of the
urbana.
country. The AIDS crisis was just starting, and I was getting active in AIDS
começando,
and building
e o
community health
ativismo era
centers.
sobre a
I
AIDS
was
e
doing
a
street outreach
comunidade,
work with
então
marginalized
eu
youth.
fazia trabalho
And I was
com
getting
a
very
juventude
frustrated
marginalizada.
that
E eu ficava
we were
muito
always protesting in
frustrado
front of City Hall
que
and
a
in
gente
front of our
protestava
legislatures.
aqui na prefeitura,
And I said to my
na
friends one day, why
assembleia.
don't we run
E
for
eu falava para
office?
meus
And they all
amigos, por que a
looked
gente
at
não
me
vai se
like I
candidatar
was
a
a crazy
alguma
person.
coisa, então? E
This
eles
was
olharam para mim e falaram, você
in
está
the mid
maluco, né?
1980s, and they said,
Isso foi no
there
meio de
are more guns
1980.
and hunters in this town, Glenn, than there are gay people. This
Tinha
isn't
muitas
San
pessoas
Francisco, and you're not
contra,
going to get
né?
elected here.
Isso foi em São
And I ran for
Francisco,
city
você não vai
council,
ser eleito.
started the campaign in
E
88,
aí
got elected
eu
in
comecei a
89, and was
fazer
one of the
uma
very first out
campanha, eu
gay
comecei
people elected.
a
And
fazer a campanha, fui
I
eleito
didn't talk
em
about the time, but I
89,
had to wear
primeiro
a
gay
Kevlar jacket to
eleito.
work. My dog was
Então,
killed. Someone
o
set
meu
my house on
cachorro
fire.
foi morto, eles puseram
But
fogo na minha
I got elected with a
casa.
very progressive
E eu
coalition
fui
of a lot of
eleito,
people who
então,
lived
com a
intersectional lives,
coalição de
it was a real struggle, and
partidos.
it was a change in the city
E
government.
foi uma
But at that
dificuldade, teve uma
time,
mudança no governo
it became a major
municipal.
identifier
E
of who
naquele
I was.
momento, eu me
And
identifiquei
while I was
muito
running
com essa
on a
questão.
whole very
E eu
broad,
estava
progressive
também me candidatando, que o
platform,
Partido Progressista é muito maior, uma
the fact that I was
plataforma
gay
grande.
I was always referred to as
E
the
o fato
gay
de eu
city
ser
councillor.
gay,
And that was a double-edged sword. It was also interesting because I was a member of the Social Democratic Party in Canada at the time, which was the more progressive party on that issue. But it pulled all its support from me because to target other and support other candidates because they didn't think a gay person could win in Canada in the 1980s. So I actually ended up having my own progressive political party remove all their volunteers and redistribute their resources to other districts. That would not happen today. That party and most parties in Canada embrace gay and lesbian and transgender rights. Fast forward, I eventually got elected mayor. But one of the things I learned is the strength of the political coalition I was in was that I was queer, but I used my own life experience of discrimination to understand. I can't equate everything about my discrimination I faced to women, to people of color, to people who live very intersectional lives. But I could understand what it was like to be marginalized and discounted. I mean, I find I deal with ageism now that I'm older. It's interesting. But that was very powerful. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to take another minute. I'm going to tell you two stories and maybe it'll open up to questions. When I got elected mayor of the city in 1998, we held the Pan American Games. And one of the things I will never forget is because South America was participating so much and the Pan American Games have been held in a number of South American cities in the years before, the Brazilian national television network took this great interest in the fact that I was gay. And I think I spent the first 3 days of the Pan American Games with journalists and television crews, and it was broadcast across the world. And it was interesting for me because my email in the mayor's office in Winnipeg filled up with Portuguese and Spanish emails, which I had to get translated from all kinds of young queer people who had not seen a lot of gay and lesbian people on their main television shows. And I actually did an hour interview on a Sunday morning show that was quite popular. And I ended up, fortunately, we actually had to get a translator into Portuguese and Spanish to work with me to respond to hundreds and hundreds of emails from aspiring political activists who wanted to know how we organized, how could they connect, what could they do. The last part of the story is really that I then moved to Ontario, into Toronto, and I got elected to the provincial government. Ontario is our biggest province. But at that point, I wasn't marginalized. I was being sought out and chased by all these political parties who wanted me to be a candidate. I eventually got elected in downtown Toronto, became minister of many things, environment, climate change, transportation, infrastructure, and always brought that queer perspective and always tried to make sure that we were not excluding people, that we were really trying to take power and what we brought at the ballot box, realizing that power isn't something politicians keep, it's something that it's a contract with people, and we give power back. We use the power of government to put the resources into communities so they can mobilize. And out of that experience, that a lot of the countries where gay and lesbian, transgender, non-binary people were being killed, I started something called Rainbow Railroad, which is the last part of my story, and that's where I do most of my work right now. Rainbow Railroad is an organization that gets queer people out of countries where they're being killed and other minorities in that sexual minorities and do that. I think one of the things at this point in my life is that I'm realizing for environmental reasons, because we're living with a huge global ecological crisis and climate change, we all have to be citizens of this planet first. We all have to look at an inclusive global movement. I have to be as worried about the lives of someone in Sierra Leone as I do about someone, a transgender person who's being hunted down and killed in Chechnya. We have to create better global movements, and that's why I think this is so important. I'm hoping that what comes out of this conference are relationships where we keep learning from each other and we build global networks, because right now we're on a planet that's in a full-on ecological crisis. We have economic crisis, we have disparity, we have marginalization of too many people, and the only way that we're going to win this is through a massive global movement to take on the fascists and the haters and the misogynists, too many of which are in power today in too many parts of the world. There's just too many bullies, there's too many patriarchal, dictatorial, authoritarian governments in this world right now, and it's going to take all of us and the lessons of all of our countries to rise up and have each other's back. We just cannot, we have to start thinking beyond our borders. Thank you.
Muito obrigada, Glenn.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I would like to address this question initially to Lorena, and then all the others can complement. For many cisgender people, white and rich, LGBT people and people of different races belong only to the prostitution scene or to comic roles on TV, or even the roles of servitude in the case of Black people. How do you deal with the fact that you are pioneers in your cities in various social and political spheres? Lorena. I would like to start answering, telling you a story that was 2 days after of having the results. When we win the city administration, we were in a press conference, and my Rodri Maia, my follower of social conference, non-binary, and then she said, Lore, it was the first woman, lesbian, and a mayor. Are you sure? And she said, yes, yes. It's visible, lesbian, because there is no prior that we have ever had a mayor in our country. And I felt immediately a big responsibility on my shoulders, so big. And I felt that I was not just alone there. That was not just me, my identity, but also representing all these people that physically are not there, these people that have been vulnerable. And this responsibility will keep on time, will last time. In fact, as I have mentioned in different interventions, I am in a community, a rural area, and the education, university is so poor. We only have one university center, technical center. We do not have universities. There is somehow a feminist activism that is growing with different feminist collectives that also achieved this preparation, this territorial work in a horizontal way on feminist pedagogy. And I believe that this same road traveled so far, also environmental, cultural aspects, social economy. This has also been so nutritive to taking up in a full way this challenge, that I have a collective mandate. Also, we live in this political decision point because a municipality is a power space. You can govern in the community. What we want to do is in a participative way, strengthen up democracies, but in a participative way. So we decide collectively what we want in that community. Also defending our land. This Manipia is a community that is vulnerable on the ecological rights. We have projects of electric transmission, more than 200 towers, electricity towers in our land, a project that somehow is affecting our health, our environment, and our society in general. And I believe that not only we have a feminist municipality, but also ecology point of view, straightening up the participation of democracy. We want to have an open municipality and where everybody feel part of this construction, because we are all responsible. I am the mayor today. My side, I have people walking alongside with their diverse cultural diversity, and we can relate, and this is valuable, this is nutritive. We have a big responsibility because I believe that this road, historical road of claiming our right, we are going to have it in our rural community. To conclude this idea, when I started up my activism, lesbian and feminist, Maria Franco was always present. Maria Franco, I was hit by a surprise kilometers away from me. I believe that we are here for her as well. Thank you, Lorena. Erica, would you like to talk about your point of view, please? I remember that the same time when I was elected, the thing is, the journalist asked me, how do you feel being the first trans woman elected in São Paulo? Because São Paulo feels the belly button of Brazil. I am the first representative elected in Brazil in São Paulo, but the first in Brazil. And then I answered, this is a denunciation. It's a claim. Internally, there, with the movements, social movements, of course we celebrate, but we need to say that this is a claim. We are claiming. How come has it taken so much time for people that are in this process of isolation to be part of politics institutionally? The first place that I look, that's something new, as is a claim. I'm claiming something here. And secondly, I see the responsibility of being this. I feel this responsibility. I feel responsible for everything that has brought me so far to understand that even though the normativity always wants to make us believe that we are always starting, our steps are coming from a long way. I'm not born now. There is history behind me that have brought me here. They did not start yesterday. To understand, this is a practice, a colonial practice. Erase the story, erase people. People without history can be defeated. So acknowledging this history and this process of fight that have brought me here is fundamental to make me stronger and understand the role that I do have in this process, in this political situation. You asked about the stereotypes, about everything that is hovering in our bodies, everything that was built in violence in society. You see, breaking this up is constant. It's a constant fight. People look at me thinking, first they question if I have a history of prostitution. They ask about my intellectuality. They try to silence me in different processes. Not that is I'm not saying bad things about prostitutes, but what I mean, this is placed in a mindset that is personalized and distributed to everybody, trans women. How do I see? I feel I'm breaking it up all the time. I'm breaking it up. I'm breaking stereotypes all the time. So I want to question. They doubt about my intellectually, my political force. They doubt what I am able to do, because effectively I'm imprisoned inside a transgender body. Then I am a Black person. When they do not doubt me, they try to find a narrative that I just expose tragedy and violence that is extremely reductionist. Of course, I talk about violence. I know how to talk about it because I experience it. I understand the individual and collective point of view, but I am willing to talk about reparation, emancipation process, and processes and practices that overcome this sadistic expectation of society, exploiting our bodies and the violence that we are submitted. It's always a battle to place in the center of discussion a narrative that is viable and there is a proposition in the sense that it's displaced, it moves away from the stereotypes, but understanding that these stereotypes exist, we need to break it, but also presenting solutions, practical solutions, and a set of speeches to engage the imaginary. So we are moving towards the naturalization of our humanities in social spaces, any spaces.
Obrigada, Érica.
Thank
Bia,
you,
você
Erica.
sente essa
Bia, do you
cobrança
feel
também
this
no seu
demand
espaço?
on you, on your space?
Acho que a
I
fala da
think
Érica,
that
ela traz uma
Erica's
denúncia,
comment
mas
brings a claim,
todas as vezes
but
que alguém
whenever
vem
someone
perguntar, né,
asks
depois de
me,
alguns meses de
after a few
mandato,
months of my
vem me
mandate, they
perguntar
ask
se eu
me
gostei,
if I
se eu quero
liked, if I would
ficar,
like to
se não tem sido um
stay,
processo muito
if it's
violento
a
pra mim.
violent process to
E
me.
aí me perguntam
And
muito
I
das
was
minhas
asked
dificuldades
about
dentro
my
do espaço da Câmara, né?
difficulties in the House
E
of
eu falo
Representatives.
que, por incrível que
And I
pareça,
say
não é
that's
tanta
amazing, it
dificuldade assim.
seems that's not so
Eu sei
difficult.
que aqui a gente está
I
no governo
know
de
that we
situação, a
are
gente está no
in the
governo, fui eleita
government.
com
I
duas
was
três outras
elected
mulheres
with 3
negras,
other black
e a
women,
bancada de esquerda
and the
majoritariamente
left
formada por
party is formed by
mulheres
women,
negras,
black women.
e essa
And this
dificuldade da gente ser
difficulty of
definida
being
não a
defined,
partir das nossas
not from
violências,
our
né? Não a partir dos
violence,
nossos
not from
atravessamentos.
our
Eu falo
crossing
que eu adoro ser
stories. I
vereadora,
love
assim,
to
né?
be a congresswoman,
Receber uma
receiving a
mensagem, te amo na
message.
rua, manda
Oh,
a Suzane me limpar.
I need to clean up
Olha,
my
semana
street
passada
last
um poste
week.
estava caindo, ele foi, o
Electric
secretário
post
de
was
família, ele
out.
foi lá,
We
viu
need
o
to
poste
fix it.
para
It
trocar
was
o poste,
fixed. It
tá
was
presente na vida das
replaced.
pessoas,
I
na
am
cidade,
present at people's lives, in their
e ser
cities.
definida
And
como
to
uma
be
pessoa que é uma
defined as a
vereadora da
person that is
cidade,
a
né?
councilwoman
Eu
in the
sou uma mulher
city.
negra,
I am a black
bissexual, de
woman,
22
bisexual, I'm
anos,
22.
mas sou
But
vereadora
I
de
am
uma
a
cidade, gosto
congresswoman
da
in a city.
política,
I
do
like
fazer
politics.
política,
I like to
e acho
make
que esse
politics. And when I
rompimento desses
break
estereótipos
these
tem a ver com essa
stereotypes,
afirmação positiva
I
dos nossos
have this
corpos
affirmative
em todos os
position of
espaços,
my
né? A
body in
gente
all the
começou uma campanha de
spaces. We start a
solidariedade alguns meses,
solidarity campaign a few months
faz parte da
ago,
campanha nacional do
part of the
PT,
national
e a
campaign of
gente
my political
distribuiu
party,
cesta básica em
distributing
igreja evangélica, em
food
igreja
in
católica, comunidade católica e
churches
terreiro de Umbanda.
and also
E em todos
other
esses lugares eu
religions,
fui ali, não me
places.
escondo, eu digo que eu não
I
abro
say that
mão,
I do
né,
not
de ser
let
quem eu
go
sou,
to be who I
mas também
am,
de estar
but I'm
presente
also
na vida das
present in
pessoas,
people's
né,
lives.
na vida da cidade.
In the
Hoje a gente tem
city,
uma
today we
luta
have
muito grande
a
contra a
very
especulação
big
imobiliária
struggle
na
against
cidade,
the real
contra
estate speculation in the
inventários que
city.
querem construir
They would
atacadão
like
na orla da
to
cidade,
have these constructions
e
in the
grandes empreendimentos
city, big
aquaviários, que privatiza
developments,
praticamente toda a orla da cidade para os
privatizing
mais
all the
ricos. E
seashore
é um
of the
debate
city
que a
for the
gente
rich
faz
people.
por
And
ser
then
gente, né?
we are
E
convergent.
entendendo,
We need to
e não só
understand
sendo
not
gente,
only
né?
being
Porque quando a
people,
gente fala desse
because when
lugar,
we
a gente
talk
fala de um
about
lugar
this
de quem
place, is
pisa
a
na cidade
place
andando,
that we are
de quem
walk through
sabe
the
que as
city.
pessoas
I
que menos
know
têm
that
casa são as pessoas
people
LGBTs,
that do not
mas
have
que
rights are LGBT,
é uma afirmação
but
positiva
it's a
desses nossos
positive
corpos nesses
affirmation of our
espaços,
bodies in
né?
these
Nesse espaço de
spaces,
poder,
in these
e não
spaces of
contando essa história
power.
única, né? Eu
It's
sempre
not
falo
a
para
single
concluir
story.
que
It's
eu
never a
não
single
entrei na
story.
política
I'm
para
not in
contar uma história de
politics to
pobreza,
tell a
de
story of
miséria,
poverty,
de
misery,
sofrimento, de dor,
suffering,
porque acho
pain.
que isso não pode definir a
This does
gente,
not define
né? E o
us.
exemplo que a
And the
gente quer dar
example
para a
that would like
sociedade
to
é que a gente é
convey is
muito mais
that
do que
we are
isso, que a gente
more than
pode ser
that. We
muito mais
can
do
be
que isso, que a
much
gente
more
precisa
than that.
combater sim
We
o que
need
nos
to
atravessa.
fight
Mas que
this.
eu
But
estudei violoncelo, fui bailarina
I
clássica,
was a
dancei
ballerina, I
profissionalmente,
played the
estudo arquitetura e
cello, I studied
urbanismo. Então eu sou
architecture.
muito mais,
I'm much more.
né? O meu corpo nesse
My
espaço
body in this
denuncia muito
space
mais tudo
claims
que cada um
more
de nós podia
that
ser,
what
né?
we
Cada um
can
de nós pode
be,
ser e pode contar uma
and
outra
we
história
can
sendo
tell
quem a
a
gente
different
é. Sem
story
abrir mão de ser quem a
without
gente é,
letting
mas
go
estando
who
na
we are, but
sociedade
being part of the
e
society,
existindo, né? Mais do que
more than
existindo,
existing,
contando essa
and
história
telling this story that is
positiva e
positive
feliz e
and
alegre,
happy
que
and
tem sim
joyful,
felicidade, que tem
no
amor, que tem tudo que a gente tem
unfortunate, but
direito de
love,
ter,
everything that we
né?
have
Não só
right, not
trabalho, não
only
só o
work,
direito de
not
viver,
only
mas o
the
direito de ter
right
uma
of
vida
living,
plena
but
e
having a
feliz.
full
Então, acho
and
que combater
happy
esse
life.
estereótipo é contar essa
Fighting
outra
this
história
stereotype, we
sobre os
tell a
nossos
different
corpos,
story
sobre a
about
nossa
our
vida
bodies,
e
about
fazer
our
essa
life,
afirmação
and
positiva de
make
quem a
this
gente é,
positive
né?
affirmation
Sem
of
abrir
who
mão de
we
quem a
are,
gente
without
é, do
letting
que a
go
gente
of who you
acredita,
are,
mas
what
com
you
esse
believe,
direito que a gente
with
tem de
this
ter uma
right
vida
that we
plena e
have for
feliz. Isso
having a
incomoda,
full
né?
and
Incomoda muito.
life.
Incomoda
We
muito ver que a
bother,
gente pode
it
ser
bothers
feliz,
when they see
pode
that
estar
we
na
are happy,
política, que
we
a
are in
gente não tem
politics,
medo,
we
que
are
a
not
gente vai
afraid,
continuar ali,
we are
que a
keep
gente
on
gosta de
doing it,
fazer
we
isso, que a
like
gente não
what
tá
we
ali só
do.
para
We are not
contar uma
just there
história
to
de
tell
dor e
a
de
story of
sofrimento.
pain and suffering.
Que bom que vocês estão
That's
aqui
great
para
that you
trazer
are
essa
here to
representatividade,
bring
para
this
mostrar que outras
representativity to
narrativas
show that
são
are other
possíveis e
narratives
deveriam
that
ser
are possible to everybody.
Né? Glenn,
Glenn,
você também teve
you also had the experience of being a pioneer in Canada. Would you like to talk about this, please?
Yeah, you know, I'm really enjoying. It's nice to be on a panel with mostly women, and that represents a much greater part of the reality of humanity. But I'm trying to think about what have I'm finding that what Bia was talking about not just expressing pain and suffering. You know, like the things I've done in my political career, I led a campaign of mayors across our country to get better financial supports from our national government for cities. I led very successful campaigns for affordable housing. My city, when I was mayor, led the country and broke records for building affordable housing, built by people who live in neighborhoods, the people who lived in low-income neighborhoods designed and built their housing. I built with some of my colleagues in my political party and movement in government in Ontario, the most successful climate change program in North America. We reduced emissions. We closed all of our coal plants. We went entirely to renewable power. Those weren't sort of issues of LGBTQ per se, but those were the things that Bea was talking about that I always wanted to do with my life. But being gay at the time I got into politics, wouldn't have allowed me to be in politics. So in the 70s, there was no out gay people. The only time in Canada you ever read about them when they were being arrested, usually for some scandal or prostitution ring or something like that. When I ran for office in the 80s, it was interesting because in 1986 in Manitoba, we got human rights legislation, including sexual orientation. In 1987, we got our first gay pride day, our first gay pride march. People came out. People had to wear bags over their heads with eyes cut out, so their employers wouldn't see them because they could lose their job. And then I got elected the next year. But because I'm one of the older people in this, I'd be interested in the perspectives of younger people. And this is something that I struggle with in my conversations with young, gay, lesbian, transgender, non-binary, the whole community, that more and more people are coming into politics. When I went into politics, it was very unusual to be queer in politics. Now in almost every part of the country, you can find lots of gay and lesbian friends. And even now, finally, non-binary and transgender people, and increasingly people who are people of color. And you know, one of the conversations that comes up is that when I was running for office, politics was not a safe place for me. I literally had threats on my life. I had attempts on my life. I had to have Kevlar jackets, but even when I was mayor, to go to work. My dogs were killed. Someone killed my neighbor's cat thinking it was mine and put the word "die fag" and hung it from my front door. And someone put a swastika and tried to set my house on fire. I stared down that hate, and I never talked about it at the time. No one ever knew that this was going on at the time. But I sort of thought I had to face in public service almost in the way that you walk. You protect your country in a war, you protect your community. I had to deal with, I had to get past that hate. And I wasn't going to give those people any publicity. And I knew the risks of my life. I was more worried about my family and my son. I have a foster son, adopted son. But we changed everything. But it was at a great price. And it was in the middle of the AIDS epidemic, and 43 friends of mine died of AIDS within 5 years of my getting elected, and I was volunteering a lot in that. Now I hear a lot of young activists in the queer community, people in office saying, you have to create a safe place first. And then I'll run. And I'd be interested in how many of you see that. I still believe that whether you're Black, woman, queer, or some combination of all of those things, to create change, we're going to have to stare down the haters. As all human rights, labor, progressive movements in our history have, they've always had to confront the violence. They've had to self-identify. And the biggest reason we have gay and lesbian rights in Canada is not because the government's powerful people. I started my career holding my partner's hand, saying I and we when I talk about queer people, gay and lesbian people, rather than they and them. We forced almost all of our legislatures in Canada to pass sexual orientation, to pass legislation protecting gender and gender expression in the courts. Very, very rarely was it, with the exception of Quebec, very, very rarely anywhere in Canada did legislatures, even progressive politicians, run to embrace legislation and change human rights. It was after massive numbers of people self-identified. And I'll conclude by just saying the AIDS epidemic outed so many gay men in Canada in the 80s that everyone knew and someone who was gay and was burying someone who was gay. And the AIDS epidemic changed the dynamic of human rights. Sorry, I will wrap up right now. Because it just outed so many people. And I'm not sure sure we would have gotten our human
porque
rights
matou
as
muitas
quickly
pessoas.
if the AIDS
Eu não
pandemic
sei
had
se esses
forced so many of
direitos
us out of the club.
humanos mudaria tão rápido se não fosse pela epidemia de AIDS nos anos 80.
Obrigada, Glenn.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for your
Esse painel
experience.
tá muito
And this
bonito, a
panel is
troca tá
so
sendo muito
beautiful.
legal,
This exchange is
as
so
falas estão
nice, so
importantíssimas,
important
mas a gente está
comments.
chegando ao
But we are
final.
reaching to the end.
Nosso tempo está um pouco apertado.
We are
E aí, a
running out
última
of time. And the
pergunta,
final
eu queria
question,
pedir pra gente
I
tentar
would
fazer
like
quase como
you
tweet,
try to have like a tweet
Qual é o breve
answer.
conselho
What
que
is
vocês
your
dariam para jovens
advice for young LGBT
pensam em
people
entrar na
think
política
about
como o melhor
entering
caminho
politics?
para
What is
fazer
the
parte
best
da
way to be
política
part of the
e
political
avançar com
scene
os direitos
and
LGBT
advance LGBT
em nosso
rights
país,
in
em seu
our
país?
country, in your
Você
countries?
pode começar com a gente, Bia.
Bia, you start, please.
Acredito, na verdade, que
I
estar
think
na política só
that
faz sentido
to
se a
be in
gente tiver
politics is
acompanhado de um
meaningful
programa
if we
de
have a
sociedade,
program in a
de um
society
projeto
program,
político, de um
political
partido
project,
político
political
também,
party,
coletivo.
collective.
Então, acho que para
So,
quem quer entrar
if you
na
would like
política,
to
é
enter
entrar para a
politics,
luta social
you go
antes
to
de entrar para a política
social
institucional.
movement
Porque
before
se a gente
politics,
entra
because if you
somente
go
para a
just
política
in
institucional, ela
politics
vem vazia,
institutionally,
né,
it's
de
empty.
conteúdo,
There's
de
no content, there is no
consistência, de
consistency, there's no
significado, de
meaning, there's
representatividade.
no
Então, essa
representativity.
representação ela tem
So
que
this
dar a partir da luta
representativity
social.
has to
Então,
come from the social
se a gente
aspect
quer mudar de
first.
coisa,
If you'd
primeiro a
like to
gente
change
se
things,
move para a luta
first you
social, depois
move
a
to the
gente conquista
social
o espaço
fight, then you
da
achieve
política institucional
spaces of politics in a
coletivamente. E é
collective
possível
way,
fazer
and it's
isso.
possible to do
Eu, a
this.
Érica, a Lorena,
Erica, I,
acho que o
and
Glenn somos
Lorena,
a
Glenn,
prova
we are the proof
de
of
que é
that.
possível
That is
fazer isso, é
possible to
possível
do it. It's
mudar as
possible to
coisas.
change
E é
things.
isso.
And that's it.
Obrigada,
Thank you, Bia.
Com a palavra, Lorena,
Lorena,
por favor.
you have the
Breve
floor now.
conselho.
Your brief comment.
Por favor.
The same
Na
line as
mesma linha
Bia
da Bia,
commented, the
que é a organização
horizontal organization,
o trabalho
territorial
territorial,
work,
os
collective
projetos
projects.
coletivos.
And I
Eu
believe
acho
that
que,
just as a
só
take-home
como uma
message, I
mensagem, eu
feel
sinto
that
que
I talk
falar
about
das minorias
minorities
é um
is a
paradigma
paradigm that is
que está
depleted now.
esgotado. Então,
Everything is
se
sustaining
sustenta o trabalho,
territorial
tudo se
work.
sustenta
We
no
are
trabalho
here.
territorial, nós
And
estamos aqui,
nobody
ninguém
will
nos
take
tira mais
us
daqui.
away from
A
here. The
organização vai
organization
ser
is
possível
possible, so we
e
can move
consigamos ir
ahead
para
also
frente
with
com
our
esses
projects
projetos
in a collective
coletivos
way and
e
transformative
transformadores.
way and
E
feminist.
feministas também.
Obrigada, Lorena.
Thank you, Lorena.
Erica, qual o melhor caminho
What is the
para fazer
best
parte do
way
cenário
to be
político?
part of the political
Breve conselho.
scenario?
Tá bom. Tentar ser breve.
I'll try to
No
be
mês
brief.
passado,
Last month,
a gente criou
we
uma
created
espécie de parada
a
gay, de
gay
parada
parade,
LGBT no
LGBT
Brasil.
parade in
Foi
Brazil.
movimento
This movement
importantíssimo
was
da sociedade
important of
civil
the civil
organizada.
society,
Grandes corporações,
organized,
nunca o
big
mercado financeiro se
corporations.
mobilizou
The financial
para
market
debater
never
política.
ever debated
A
politics.
sociedade,
The
enfim, cidadãos,
society,
cidadãs, de defesa
citizens,
individual, Ministério
individuals, the
Público, enfim.
prosecution's
E eu, como
office,
parlamentar,
and I am
para
a
derrubar
representative
projeto
to
que
break a
dizia que
project to
LGBTs
say that
era
LGBT
má influência
was a bad
e exerciam
influence and
práticas danosas,
exercise
proibindo
harmful
LGBTs
practices,
estarem na publicidade.
forbidding
Assim como
LGBT
essa
in
lei
these
foi é uma lei
campaigns.
muito
A
parecida com
very
a que foi
similar
aprovada
law
na
that has
Hungria
been
agora.
approved in Hungary
A
now.
gente fez essa
We had this
mobilização tomou conta do país.
mobilization
Foi uma
taking
coisa
up the
incrível.
country, was amazing,
Multinacionais, assim,
multinational
lugares muito
companies,
pequenos
very small
também,
places to
comércios muito
part,
simples, escritórios de
simple
advocacia, movimentos
offices,
sociais,
social movements
sociedade no conceito
everywhere
mais amplo de
in the
sociedade
broad
civil organizada.
concept
Por que eu estou dizendo
organized.
isso?
What
Aí
am
do
I
meu
telling you?
conceito.
That's the point here.
Entre na política,
Get into
mas não
politics,
é
but
só a
not
política
just
institucional
politics, not the
que
institution
rege e
that
que movimenta a sociedade.
moves
Política é um
society.
espaço
Politics is
importante
an
a ser
important
disputado,
space,
mas
yes,
precisamos
but we do
de todo
need
mundo
everybody
nas
in the
corporações, precisamos dos
corporations,
movimentos
in the
sociais,
social
precisamos das grandes
movements, in
empresas,
the
das
big
universidades
companies,
e
at
diversos
universities,
espaços
different
de decisão
spaces,
e de poder.
decision-making
Então, assim, quer ir para a
spaces.
política,
You would like to
vá,
go to
mas
politics? Go.
política não se faz só
Politics not
na
just
institucionalidade.
institutions.
Política se
Politics
faz
is made
quando você
when you
contribui e movimenta
and when
a
you
polis, a
move the
coletividade.
collective, the
Então, assim como
polis,
a gente
as
conseguiu se
we
unir no
could
mês
get together
passado
last
de
month
maneira
at
nacional,
a
né,
national
uma
level,
movimentação
a
nacional,
national
e que a gente
movement, and we
conseguiu
could
derrubar
break
projeto
that project
LGBT-fóbico na
LGBT
Assembleia Legislativa de
phobic
São
in the
Paulo,
Congress in
a
São
gente
Paulo.
também
We
pode
can also
pensar
think
numa política
about
no sentido
politics in the
macropolítico, de
macro-political
ocupação,
sense of
na verdade,
occupation,
reintegração de posse de todos os
reintegration
espaços
of
de
all the
sociabilidade, de
spaces of
poder e de
social
decisão.
power and
Então, a política é um
decision.
lugar, mas os
Politics is
outros
a
também,
place, but
nós
there are
precisamos de gente em
other
todo
places. We
lugar.
need people
Na advocacia,
everywhere.
na
Law
engenharia,
firms,
na arquitetura,
engineering,
na pedagogia,
architecture,
todo
pedagogy,
lugar. Então,
everywhere.
se engajem.
That's it.
A questão
Engage
é essa,
yourselves.
se
That's the
engajem.
topic.
Engage.
Engage
Bom,
yourselves.
muito obrigada,
Great. Thank you,
por
Erika.
finalizar essa pergunta.
And then now, Glenn,
qual é o conselho
what is
para
your
um jovem
advice for a young
LGBT
person LGBT that
na
would like to
política?
enter
Breve
politics?
conselho,
Your
por
brief
favor.
advice.
Muito apertadinho.
We do not
Brief.
have time.
Brief. Talk to the people you love and care about, and make
Falando
sure
com as
your
pessoas
family
que
and
você
friends are on
ama,
board.
garante que as suas
Have
famílias e
honest
amigos
conversations
estejam a
with people about
bordo,
your
conversas
strengths and
honestas
weaknesses
com as pessoas
and what
sobre
you
as
need
suas
to learn.
forças e
Get the
fraquezas, o que
consent
você
of the
tem que
people
aprender.
you represent. And by that I mean, go
Pegue
talk to
esse
community leaders
consenso
in the
da
right
pessoa,
and you want to
fala
run
com
in.
líderes da
I agree with you. Get involved in the
comunidade.
social movement or something that matters to
Envia
you in your
também
community
movimentos
so that you
sociais, se
can learn
importa
about
para
it.
você na comunidade,
Understanding
você
that
pode
politics is
aprender com
always
eles.
about learning and it's
Compreender
always about giving
política,
back.
você
You'll
tem que
never be
aprender
an
sempre,
expert,
retribuir
but
sempre.
you'll be
Você nunca
a
vai ser um
well-informed
expert,
person who can
mas
bring
você
community
vai estar
together.
uma pessoa
And
muito
when you win an
informada
election,
para
you don't
juntar
win
as
an election. The
coisas.
people who voted for
Quando
you
você
won
ganha
the
uma
election.
eleição,
So
você não
spend
ganha
your
eleição,
time
as pessoas
figuring out
votaram
how
em
you
você
take
que
the
estão
power of
ganhando.
government
Então,
and
como que esse
give
poder
that
no
power back to
governo
people, give the
e
resources
vai
so
ser
people can
retribuído
create
para as
the jobs,
pessoas,
can create the
recursos que
kind of
eles
safe
precisam para
community free of violence.
empregos,
You can do
comunidade
so much
segura.
because you
Você
represent
pode
the
fazer
Commonwealth.
tanta
All the
coisa
money
porque você
you have
representa
is
o
the
bem
money that your
comum. O
neighbors
dinheiro
came
todo que você
together
tem
to
é o
share.
dinheiro
Decide
que os
what you want
vizinhos
to do.
juntaram
Realize
para
it's not a
compartilhar.
job, it's
Decide o que
public
você vai
service.
fazer,
Decide
não é um
when you're
trabalho,
going to get
é
in
parte da
and
vida.
what conditions
Quando
you're going to
você
leave politics
entra,
on
o
and what
que
you're
você
going to
vai
do when
deixar
you're in
quando sair
politics,
da
and leave
política? Quando
a
você
lot
vai
of
fazer
room
quando
for
está
other
lá?
people's
E
ideas.
vai deixar espaço também para
Always
a
be
ideia das
honest, the
outras
truth
pessoas. Seja
builds
sempre
trust,
honesto, verdadeiro,
and
as pessoas vão
always be
confiar.
hopeful and optimistic.
E sempre tenha
Your job is to always
esperança,
create
seja
positive
otimista.
change.
Sua função é criar uma
And I
mudança
think anyone who holds
positiva.
elected
E eu acho
office
que todo
has the
mundo
great
que
joy
tenha
of
essa
having
posição
incredible
política tem a
contact with their community.
felicidade
It's hard
de
not
ter
to feel
contato com a
excited or
comunidade.
hopeful when
É
you get to
difícil não
see
se sentir
all the
tão
things that
animado
good
quando
people
você
are doing
vê
in your
as
community.
coisas que as pessoas estão fazendo na
And
comunidade o tempo
realize
inteiro.
it's just going to get better. It was
Perceber
really
que as
hard
coisas
to
vão
be out
ficar
and gay and
melhor.
be
É
safe in the
difícil
1970s and 80s.
ser
I think it's
seguro nos
really
anos
hard
70,
to be
como eu era gay, né?
transgender
Então é
today.
difícil
And
você
people are
ter
fighting.
transgênero
Every
hoje. As
generation
pessoas
fights a different
lutam, toda geração
different
luta.
fight.
É
And let's never
diferente,
forget
a
that in
luta é
over 80
diferente.
countries in the
Nunca
world,
esqueça que tem
being
mais
queer
países no
in any way,
mundo
gay, lesbian, transgender, is
que
still
ser
illegal.
gay,
In a large majority of
lésbica,
those
é
countries, you can be
ilegal
put to
e a
death
maior
or
parte
jailed.
desses países
So
as
let's
pessoas
not forget
morrem
our
ou vão
international
presas por essa
commitment
orientação.
to
Então
all
não
of
esqueçam
our
disso
fellow
internacionalmente.
travelers in our community around the world who are at
Aquelas
such risk
pessoas
right
que
now, to
viajam
keep an eye
e
on the
podem
condition
sofrer esse tipo. A gente vai
of
manter
all
esse olho aberto
the
para
men and
eles
women and
também.
non-binary people that are so
Homens e
much at
mulheres,
risk.
pessoas
We
não
can't forget
binárias,
that all of
a
us have some
gente não
privilege here
pode
to
esquecê-los.
some
Todo
extent.
mundo, a gente tem que cuidar um dos outros.
Muito obrigada, Glenn.
Thank you so much, Glenn.
Eu só posso agradecer
I can
mais
only
uma vez a
say thank you
participação
so
de
much for your
todos aqui.
participation.
Estou muito grata
I'm
de
so
fazer parte desse
grateful of being
momento.
part of this
Muito
moment.
grata pela
So
confiança.
grateful for your
Obrigada a
trust.
você que esteve
Thank you
conosco
so much,
assistindo. Mais uma vez,
participants.
obrigada
Thank
pra
you,
pra
Erika, Bia, Lorena, Glenn.
Infelizmente, a Daniela Castro não
Daniela
conseguiu se
Castro
reunir
could
com a
not
gente hoje,
make
porque ela
it.
teve
She had
uma
a
demanda
special
urgente no
meeting
Ministério da Argentina
at
que ela trabalha.
the office in
Mas
Argentina.
acho que foi
I believe it's been
incrível por todo
amazing,
mundo que está
amazing.
aqui.
Everybody
As
who's
contribuições
here, the
foram
contributions
maravilhosas,
were
a troca foi muito
wonderful.
legal.
The exchange was
E a
amazing.
semana não para
And
por
this
aqui,
week
o evento
never
não para por
stopped.
aqui.
We are
Às
having
14
more.
horas nós voltamos
At 2
no
p.m.
Fórum de Direitos
BRT, we are going to have
LGBTQ2+,
the
para falar
second
sobre
part to talk
Pink Money.
about pink money.
Não percam. Eu
Do
sou a
not
Babu
miss
Carreira.
it. I am
Obrigada
Babu
novamente
Carreira. Thank
e
you
até a
so
próxima.
much. See you next time.
Gracias.